good to go?
Yeah.
You guys are ready?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, welcome everybody to the Hub Talks. My name is Karsybayev. I'm the managing partner at BigSky Capital. We are an early stage venture capital firm that invests into enterprise B2B SaaS companies in emerging markets. Very excited about this conversation, more specifically because of an opportunity that we got this year to bring our esteemed guests, our venture partners, and our LPs here all the way from the United States to Kazakhstan to experience just the country in itself. And the Digital Bridge conference was a great opportunity to showcase all of the innovation and the technological advancements here in the region. So I'm super pumped, super excited about this conversation. And we have a lot to cover, so I will start off by introducing, maybe letting you guys introduce yourselves. Just a brief thumbnail version of your background and your career. So, Renato, I'll start with you first.
Absolutely. Well, hello everyone. It's first I'm going to start by saying it's a pleasure to be here in Kazakhstan. Beautiful country, beautiful people, beautiful food. I work at product security leadership at Meta, where I have the privilege to scale product security for products used for billions of people around the world. But I'm also a limited partner with BigSky, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm very impressed by the organization and the quality of the event here, and looking forward to the conversation here with my colleagues.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm Julie Davila. I'm an entrepreneur and also a venture partner with BigSky Capital. My own history of the company goes back to the most recent startup I operated in the email security space. That's where John and I met, and the relationship continued through there. My own background is sort of multidisciplined from a technology engineering perspective. Done a little bit of cloud work, a little bit of like big data work, security engineering stuff, and kind of have been all over the place in the technological landscape, and it's been really cool to see sort of that same level of breadth in Kazakhstan, and the types of problems entrepreneurs here are challenging or taking on.
Thank you, Julie. Philip.
Hi, my name is Philip Guarino. I am a serial entrepreneur as well. Also, have been working with John at BigSky. Very happy to be here in Kazakhstan, and I very much appreciate the invitation and being able to work with such an exciting team. In terms of what I do, I work as an advisor to firms. Also lead Harvard Alumni Entrepreneurs, which is on their board, the largest organization within the university, about 18,000 members, about 104 countries, and I'm an advisor to Harvard Data Science Review. I started my career actually in emerging markets. So for me, when I first spoke with John some time ago and understood his model, I was very impressed because there's so much talent that comes out of countries that is so often not appreciated or underappreciated. And so I think what BigSky is doing is truly is really inspirational. And I thank BigSky, and I also thank the organizers of Digital Bridge for really a wonderful experience.
It's great. Thank you, Philip. And thank you, all of you guys, for brief introductions. Julie, I'd like to start up with you, and perhaps you could share the overall theme of the Digital Bridge conference this year is all about artificial intelligence and advancements in that space. As far as your first impression that, through the days here at the conference and experiencing the culture of Kazakhstan, just overall, share maybe some of your first impressions. What have you observed more specifically around the level of development of the ecosystem here in the country, some of the startups that you have met? Just share some of your initial experiences. What has been the experience like for you?
Yeah, it's been really interesting here because it's very easy to sort of get trapped in the bubble that you sort of experience on the western side of the world, right, with the U.S. or even in some of the European markets. And one of the things that I think is a great advantage to Kazakhstan startups that not a lot of folks have access to is the ability to have more cost-effective workforce just because of how early everything is. So Kazakhstan is able to leverage a relatively new set of technologies leveraging AI with a workforce that is hungry to learn this new technology in a way where they're not necessarily competing at say like the same compensation levels of like AI engineers in like the U.S. Right? So the Kazakh startups are able to sort of keep things in Kazakhstan, operate really effectively, and generate money from consumers and businesses that are maybe like Western-based countries, right? So the margins are pretty substantial, and at the same time, it's also been really, really special to see the amount of startups that are really helping fill that sort of talent gap that would exist otherwise, right? You have folks like Decentra, right? Like creating business models off of enabling the workforce within Kazakhstan to then contribute to the startup ecosystem and even to really establish businesses as well. So it's been really great to see kind of the sort of holistic approach within the country as far as technology goes, and certainly within AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I could definitely agree with you as far as the extreme, very early stages of the development of some of the startups as well, because there has never been a better time or timing of the market to build solutions in artificial intelligence or anything from that standpoint in an emerging market as Kazakhstan, because of the ecosystem is in infancy, and providing the resources and the opportunity to build something meaningful. I think here you have much greater chances to accomplish that versus in already some developed markets. So that makes a lot of sense. Renato, you've been in product security and just overall in engineering space for most of your career for very large organizations working on very complex projects. You've met quite a few startups here, quite a few companies. Share your feedback so far. What have you observed? What are the different opportunities that you see here in Kazakhstan?
One thing that strikes me as something, because of course I can highlight some of the things that I saw here, but I also saw in other places. But one thing that strikes me as very specific to this ecosystem is that as you organize these events, you have both a fusion of the government fomenting this ecosystem with the private sector fomenting this ecosystem, and then you have an event like that. It culminates in an event like that, where you have the target audience as 6-year-olds to 80 years old. And that is fascinating to me, right? Because you're not only focusing on the current generation of entrepreneurs and startups, but you're already thinking about 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And that is fascinating. I never saw that anywhere, which leaves me with the belief that you guys are really targeting the future as well, right? You're already thinking about the next opportunity, and that's what's very special.
Philip, you have a great wealth of experience working on a global scale. You being based out of Paris, but you work with startups and companies from all over the world. You serve on the boards of and advisory roles for companies of various size and various geographic locations. What have you seen here that perhaps you haven't observed in other regions or in other countries that really stood out to you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I one of the things that really struck me was the enthusiasm, the level of enthusiasm that all of the people that I met with have. I think partially that has to do with the fact that I think some of the orientation, the geopolitical orientation of that the government has taken to really position Kazakhstan as a real global player, to collaborate with so many different nations. And I really think that you see that enthusiasm with the entrepreneurs. You see that they are, demographically, you have a young population. You have a population that is very much oriented. You have a young population that is very much thinking from the beginning of how do I access global markets, and that I think is a tremendous advantage, because so many times you look at, for example, European countries that have medium-sized markets, they're entirely focused on their medium-sized markets, and they get trapped. Whereas here, when I talk to people, they're saying, we're thinking about the West, we're thinking about Japan, we're thinking about. So I think they have a very strong advantage.
Yeah, very interesting perspectives, and I appreciate you guys sharing that because as a early stage fund, as Big Sky Capital, we're on a constant hunt and on a constant search for unique opportunities, very unique markets. Especially market as Kazakhstan, we've seen some success in terms of the companies really moving the needle from a standpoint of building a solution that matters, building a solution that's very scalable, and be able to take that to a much bigger market like US, for example, where you validate your product, you validate your hypothesis in a smaller market as Kazakhstan, and then take that solution and go on a global scale. We're making huge bets in that perspective because we see the opportunity and we see how much development is happening here. So a good portion of our thesis really focuses on emerging markets as such, as Kazakhstan, Southeast Asia, all of those. Julie, you've been with in investing space for a little bit in different capacities. You're an entrepreneur yourself. You've exited a company as well, and now being with us at Big Sky Capital as a venture partner, you also get an opportunity to see different caliber of founders and how essentially startups are evaluated in a different criteria. For you personally, what are some of the key characteristics that you value in founders that are extremely early stage, that are just going from a drawing on a napkin from 0 to 1? It's probably one of the hardest phases of startups, where a lot of startups actually die, that they moving from that 0 to 1. What are some of the things that really stand out to you in founders that you would want to back as an investor?
Yeah, so I think foundationally there's really kind of one attribute that is a key indicator of success, and that is when you're an early stage founder, right? I've been there a couple times in my career. Google isn't going to help you answer the types of questions and problems you have as a founder. So then the important piece becomes figuring out a way to determine whether or not an idea you just had was actually a good idea or was it a bad idea, right? Because I think a lot of founders, certainly in the early stage, will spend a lot of time getting their MVP together, getting their first product out the door, because they're operating off of a lot of assumptions. And then once they actually go to market and try to pitch it to people, whether it's a VC or a potential customer, it falls flat, right? It doesn't really resonate. So one of the things I like to see in a founder is they come up with the theory, right? Where we're trying to solve this problem and take this group of people, this group of organizations from point A to point B. How quickly can we find out if that's actually, if we're thinking about it the right way, right? Many times before they even code, right? So that's sort of a risk mitigation from a decision-making perspective, I think is really important. The other part is sort of just general resilience, right? I think anybody who's been a startup founder knows that you experience the highest highs and the lowest lows as a founder. And oftentimes the thing that gets you out of the lowest lows is to continue to take step forward, to not quit. And it's something that a lot of people don't know whether they have it in them until they actually go through that experience and have gone through a lot of those kind of valleys in the startup journey. So again, the tenacity, and then also just the ability to figure out quickly whether or not a decision was good or not, and being able to iterate very, very quickly off of that.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because at the end of the day, when you're so early stages in your startup, there's a lot of things that could go wrong, there's a lot of things that could go right, and you need to be mentally prepared to pivot as many times as needed to see that product market fit, or to identify certain very early stage indicators that there's particular need for the product that you're building. So that resonates, that makes a lot of sense from a standpoint where you talk about valuing in the early stage founders. Renato, you've been involved with us at Big Sky Capital in various capacities, but the one that really stands out when we talk about the value add for the portfolio potential investments is your expertise that you bring to the table. And I know that for a fact that a lot of VCs say that. A lot of VCs at least strive to bring that value to the portfolio companies, but a lot of times it just doesn't come to fruition from for various reasons. You've also helped us go through that due diligence process on various companies and applying your cybersecurity expertise and going through that due diligence process, but then also moving to the next phase when we invest and try to help the companies grow. Talk a little bit about the importance of that, being the importance of the value add investor or the value add resource as a fund. What really makes it valuable, and how essentially do you apply that in order to help those companies?
Yeah, no, great question. To continue a bit on what Julie mentioned, or in previous question about 0 to 1, right? Sometimes I think the skill set you need to get 0 to 1 in a startup, on a large organization, a project, is different than the skill set you need from 1 to 1.1, 1.2 towards 2, right? So I guess as a company owner, a project owner, a VC owner, you have to realize when you need additional skill sets to build your Lego castle in a sense. So bringing this value and knowing when to let it go, when you can rely on others, knowing who to reach out for coaching and those kind of things, is extremely important skill set in anyone's career, right? And I think a VC, as someone that is an entrepreneur, you gotta look for people that can add that value for you, right? That bring that value. Someone that you can call if you have a problem, and then they can analyze that situation and engage the right person that will help them to move the needle from 1 to 1.1. And sometimes a conversation, an engagement from the right person can move you there in a much better or faster time, right? So I think that's the value, to summarize, that companies or VCs like BigSky can bring to startups, kind of bringing the right skill set to help or mentor those founders to be able to accelerate the solution of fundamental problems that might take longer, and they might lose track of what is really matter in their company if they go by themselves, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you've shown that in practice to be able to help the companies identify those opportunities where they need the most help, and actually coming up with an actionable plan, not just theory, because talk is cheap, and at the end of the day, you have to walk the walk and be able to come to the table prepared to say, here's the list of things that I think you guys should execute on, and here's at the end of the day, anybody can come up with the ideas. But what really matters is the execution. So that makes a lot of sense what you're talking about. From a different perspective, Philip, you have experience as a board director, as a board advisor for companies of various stages, as we've mentioned. But I serve on multiple boards myself in companies, various sizes as well. And unfortunately, I observe a lot of inefficiencies in how these board meetings are run, how essentially these boards are structured. Because it always feels like, not always, but at times it feels like it's just a fancy status update meeting where the founder comes in, puts on a very colorful presentation, and just wows everybody with some great features that were built, and not getting to the nitty-gritty of what are the true problems we're facing and how we're going to solve that together as a board. Tell us about your experience as a board member. What has worked well for you in the past, and maybe some of the lessons learned through that experience as a board advisor, as a board member. The reason I'm asking that question is because I want the founders to also be aware of what it takes to run an effective board meeting, what it takes to build an effective board.
Yeah, that's a really excellent question, John. So I think one of the key things, there are a couple of elements here, some of which tie in with Renato's comments about having appropriate mentorship, but I think one is authenticity, and what I mean by that, in a very broad sense, is having a board that truly understands and truly cares about the well-being of the company, right? But by the same token, from the perspective of the entrepreneur herself or himself, to be able to say, these are the people that are going to help me be successful. And a lot of times, unfortunately, that is a disconnect. Either the entrepreneurs choose investors in desperation, and there's a mismatch, or communication is not authentic or not completely transparent. And so, to Renato's point, people are not able to get the valuable, tangible assistance that they need to propel the company. So if you don't have those board dynamics of openness and practical discussion and focus more on show, focusing on show is not going to move the needle. Focusing on the facts, focusing on the challenges, that's going to move the needle.
Yeah. And to add a little bit more to that, I spend a lot of time mentoring and coaching the board advisors, board members themselves, because I unfortunately also observe where some of the individuals who take the board seats for not the right reasons.
Exactly.
And they don't necessarily understand what it takes, what are they for, and how to help the company in itself. Because as an example, if as a board member, I know that the company is maybe struggling to hire an executive, like chief marketing officer, and instead of us sitting in a board meeting saying you should go find here, you should go post here, and we'll do the introductions, all of that, I rather have the board member come prepared to the board meeting. Here's a list of resumes that I already pre-screened, pre-vetted, and I interviewed 10 candidates, and these are the top 3, and here's the reasons why I already highlighted on their resume. They would be a great fit for this particular company. To me, that's an effective just approach to help the company in general, because
yeah, and I would also add, that's a great point. I would also add that they're truly, again, going back to this point of authenticity from the perspective of the board advisor.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing is to say, hey, I'd love to be on many boards. I'd love to be a board advisor to many companies. But the real question is, do I truly want to see this person be successful, this company be successful?
Yeah.
And there's a big difference there. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a very valid point. Julie, you've spent a great deal of your career in cybersecurity. You've built a company in this space, in that industry. What are the other trends or insights in the current markets where we at that you're personally excited about? Where do you see the most opportunity? It could be anything, whether that's a particular vertical or a particular market. Just share your insights looking into your personal crystal ball.
Yeah, so on the cybersecurity front, there's kind of a few things that are still kind of problem areas in the space, right? So one of them is like identity, right? Especially with the proliferation of things like OCS and OT, ICS and OT systems, sort of separating them from like IT, having sort of a way to consistently make sense of identity in a way that's dynamic and takes into account what the very dynamism of not only users but increasingly machines that are oftentimes just by design less predictable than they were in the past. So things in that space are really, really interesting to me. Another part also kind of related to the operational technology front is on the cybersecurity side and the visibility and asset discovery of systems within those types of architectures right now is not trivial, right? So typically, like in the IT world in cloud, right? If you do asset discovery, like how do you do it? You hit like a bunch of APIs. You sort of see like, is this thing represented in my cloud database or in whatever? If it's not, cool, like we have discovered an asset. But it's a little less. It's a lot more challenging when you have, we're talking about like manufacturing facilities that have devices that aren't necessarily always connected to a cloud and are oftentimes connected to by way of an industrial controller, right? So anytime you have like daisy-chained industrial controllers, you have limited visibility into the things those controllers actually operate against, and I think that's a wide open space in cyber. And then the third trend that I'm really seeing, especially on the U.S. side, is around the on supply chain security within the software space, right? So, what does that mean? It means whether you're a big business or a small business or even an individual, you should be able to feel a high degree of confidence that the software you're consuming has your best interest in mind in terms of how it was built and how it was ultimately delivered to you. And that's something that is a big problem because it's becoming a compromise in the supply chain of software is a really attractive point for intruders, right? Because they're not getting in through the desktops of your employees, they're getting in through the software that you're buying from the Microsofts of the world, from the startups of the world. So startups that are operating in the space to make the delivery of software more secure, whether it's on-prem or through the cloud or some kind of hybrid model, is very, very important, and it's a space that it's not so clear cut how to do it properly all of the time. It's going to be a little bit different for all organizations, and I think the pie is still quite large for startups to enter into that space.
There's an interesting company that we recently invested into, which was through your referral, Key Caliber. And Renato, you also helped through the due diligence process to go through that. And the unique opportunity there is on that specific cybersecurity front, where at organization of various size, you deal with different partners and other technology providers that plug into your ecosystem, and solutions like Key Caliber is able to identify those vulnerabilities and come up with an actionable plan to address that. So that's very unique, very interesting space that I see a lot of opportunity for growth, and a lot of companies are not doing enough and just being more reactive versus proactive.
Yeah, exactly.
Where I'm getting at is you've also have great wealth of experience in product security. We've worked together at Ultimate Software, and now you at Meta, and overseeing the different peripherals within the organization. Share your insights, share some of the trends that you are personally excited about, whether that's cybersecurity or any type of technology.
All companies that I ever worked with, absolutely no one has assets done perfectly. Even Google, in their Beyond Corp kind of paperwork, they document very precisely that they gave up on doing precise inventories towards an approach of meta inventory because it's so hard, right? When you have that complexity. I also like the aspects touching the supply chain, both in software but also in third parties, right? These complex products have millions of dependencies. If you build a graph of these dependencies, it looks like the number of stars in the galaxy is so complex and no one understands really. And you have maybe an open source repo owned by someone in Bulgaria. Nothing against Bulgaria, I love the country, but and then tomorrow that same open repo is owned by someone in Brazil, right? And you as an organization is depending on the code run by someone in Brazil, for example, right? So that's how important it is to take some control of that. Another point that I would just add here would be the scarcity of security resources. So if you get any organization, there's always a ratio of 10 to 1, 100 to 1 between security people and other engineers, in a sense. So it's always hard to keep up as a security professional, right? Because there's a lot of projects on the table and you cannot keep up. Whatever solution startups can think of to help to scale manual work, I think is super successful. And I think that because we are in an AI conference, that connects very well because AI can help with that, right? For example, triaging of issues that are oftentimes done manually. If you can automate that with AI, right? You are already, as someone in a company, if I can buy a solution that is going to automate AI, maybe reduce the workload of my people and allow me to refocus those people to other problems, right? Or cut my kind of, in the end of the day, hiring needs, that's going to automatically pay back whatever investment I put there, right? So I think those kind of applications of AI are super pertinent to cybersecurity as well, especially when you're dealing in a problem space where you have to filter for a lot of noise, like, for example, attacks, and you need some sort of, putting a lot of people to do that in the past, but if you can do that with AI, right? So I think problems where AI can solve to reduce the workload in cybersecurity are also extremely valuable for startups to deep dive. Yeah.
There's three other companies that I am personally very excited about that we recently invested into. One is Cerebra AI in health tech space, where they're revolutionizing the whole process of diagnosing early stroke conditions. So there's one in health tech space. There's another one in fit tech, where we're talking about the fitness and longevity, and people now being a lot more aware and interested in investing into themselves. So Hero's Journey. I mean, all of us went for a workout and actually saw the technology, saw the facility, how that could be very transformational to the industry. And then the third is on the prop tech side, where we invested into a Pippin title, where they essentially taking a very sporadic approach, where individualized and siloed databases all over the United States could be brought together into a single platform to streamline the process of a very important phase of property acquisition when it comes to title search and identifying that. From your perspective, Philip, what are the other industries that you're personally excited about, where you see companies that could make the most impact from a standpoint that where you operate in?
Yeah, interesting. So I do quite a bit of advisory work with AI companies in particular. I actually co-founded a company, or co-launched a company that was focused on AI for marketing, consumer insights. And since then, I've been working with several companies, and two of them actually, one in the fintech industry, helping banks with credit decision, automated credit decisions. But another one, which was quite interesting and quite intriguing, a company based in Miami called Human Intelligence, and really fascinating story behind it. Basically, what they saw in the market was the growth in distributed teams across the world. They also noticed a younger generation that had trouble with soft skills and communicating within corporations. And the result of all of this was they had companies that are seeing more and more loss in their personnel, people leaving. So what they developed was a program basically that uses AI to help to improve teamwork, to improve, for example, if I'm about to write an email to Zhan, the AI suggests this is a better style perhaps of how we should speak, or to the manager, this is someone on our team that is brilliant, but maybe is a little bit too quiet, and we need to engage that person. So the applications of AI are just absolutely expanding exponentially all of the time. So
Yeah.
very exciting things.
Oh, that's a great example, and appreciate you sharing that. So, with the few minutes that we have left, I want to give you guys an opportunity to maybe share, words of wisdom, maybe advice, or series of advice to local entrepreneurs here in Kazakhstan. You guys have had the unique opportunity to see the country, to see all of the great advancements, especially through a conference like Digital Bridge. Maybe spend a couple of minutes talking about what are some of the things that you would recommend if you were building a company here in the market like Kazakhstan. Maybe Renato, if we could start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll go with this one. Say no. Say no. Know how to say no and when to say no to things. Prioritization is super important. So when you're trying to do 10 things and you try to do nothing, sometimes it's the same thing. So know when to push back, know when to say no to people, even VCs, right? I guess, or board members, because to Phil's point, they might not have your best interest in heart. I hope they do. But in a sense, have good partners, but know when to trust people, but also know when to say no, to push back, to know what is your next important thing, your priority, right? The main thing has to continue to be the main thing. So I think saying no sometimes is super important. I'll close with that.
Great, very
Yeah.
great advice. I actually struggle with that myself and keep reminding of the importance of saying no. Because at the end of the day, we always want to get engaged in the most exciting things. So that's a great advice. Julie, any words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is to be mindful of distractions, right? I think as an entrepreneur, it's really easy to get distracted with things that don't matter. And if we think about like what does matter, what matters is making money, right? Because like that's why you ultimately started a business, right? So I think to give a very like classical example, it can be very tempting as an early stage company to spend a disproportionate amount of time on your landing page, right? Like your website, making it pretty, making sure the CSS is just right, the borders are just right. Like for the vast majority of startups, like that doesn't matter. Right? Neither are your Facebook ads. That doesn't matter. What matters is talking to customers, talking to prospective customers, and it's hard work. It's the digital version of going door to door and trying to sell something to people you don't know, and it's painful. You're going to get rejected. You're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of criticism. But that's the real work, and that's the thing that's ultimately going to stretch you to a place where you do find product market fit and get ahead. So I think that's the biggest thing more than anything is to focus on the things that are going to make you money, and those things are talking to customers, talking to prospects, and hearing what they're saying, hearing their actual problems, and focusing on that. Because your website, your Facebook posts, your LinkedIn messages, that's not going to move your company ahead. The grind of talking to people is.
Great advice. And Philip?
Sure, and I would add to that. I agree with Julie's point. I think in a broader context, I would say build your network, right? So your network is your and choose wisely. Choose your investors wisely, but also be open to feedback from your customers, feedback from peers. Obviously, that's hard because you can't take everyone's feedback. That can be helpful. And I really believe that having an international network can be very powerful to propel your success.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice from all of you guys. And if I could just add a little bit more to that, from a perspective of really trying to enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, because startup life is not easy. Startup life is freaking difficult. It's hard. I've been there multiple times. And it's not for anyone. It takes a certain crazy personality to be able to say, okay, day in and day out for the next 5-10 years, that's all I'm gonna do, deal with rejection. But really focusing on that journey in itself, that Julie, you mentioned, you're gonna get rejected millions of times. Learn from that process, enjoy that process, even though sometimes it just feels like it's the end of the world and the whole weight is on your own shoulders. But really focusing on the journey, because I really love that Kobe Bryant's famous quote where he talks about, the times where you wake up at 4 a.m. and you don't want to wake up but you still do it, or at times when you work through the night and you don't feel like doing it but you're still doing it. That's actually the happiness. That's actually what it's all about. So I would just add something to that extent. I want to thank you guys for today's conversation. It was very short but insightful. I personally love doing those because I learned from those conversations myself quite a bit. So I really hope you enjoy your time here in Kazakhstan. We're very humbled and thankful that you guys were able to make the time and travel all the way from 10,000 miles and see my homeland, see this beautiful country, and I really hope this is not the last time that you guys will be here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ahmet.